I'm confused if people are just not able to access the calendar or don't know if the calendar is there. But I do have a way for you guys to check my schedule that is pretty well updated. I do say so myself. If you guys ever have any questions about when I'll be streaming something. But alright. First game of the day, first game of the series, first game of the tournament. These guys have a long way to go to actually be able to qualify, and it's a top 2 qualifier, I believe, as well. In the top left, going for a forward wall-off, we have the yellow Terran, Ziggy. In the bottom right, as the blue Zerg, it is JonSnow. It's been a while since I've cast this guy. Graduated college, kind of maybe stopped playing, but not ever really retiring. And then I don't know if he actually played in the previous qualifiers. If he did, he didn't get too far, but still playing at a pretty high level. It was once the NA's great hope. Ziggy, being a European Terran, has... I don't know if he's ever really had like a moment where he was, you know, maybe the next best. I don't think so. But he is still a very fun Terran to watch and very good. So I'm actually going to give him the edge here, even though we do have a server preference thingy. You know, JonSnow getting the favoritism here. As the closest you can get to Europe without actually going over to Europe is East, and I'm pretty sure JonSnow lives in the East. Anyways. Forward 2 racks, and a 3rd rack's on the way, so we get ourselves some Reapers. It's at the Children's Day in my country. Yes, it's actually a holiday or something celebrated in a lot of different countries. Ooh, Roach is on the way. JonSnow did see the forward barracks. Not yet. He actually was planning on going for his own cheese and is now seeing that it's a forward wall off. 2 barracks, more than 1. Simple math right there. You're going to be getting some aggression. In this case, the Roach Warren, while used offensively, can now be used defensively, and it's not really too bad at all. You can turn them into Ravagers, and that's the initial way people were defending against Proxy Reaper when it was a really tough build. Thank you, Ragnarok, for the raid. What's up, everyone? CG should follow Nina through most of the tournament. I'm following, I mean, people I'm interested in, but also just like whoever has a lobby ready to go. A stream's death, a caster's death, is when there's nothing happening. Inspiration gets lost pretty quickly when you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs waiting for someone, because sometimes it's like, oh, easy peasy, they're about to play next, and sometimes it's easy peasy, oh, they went on a lunch break. Awkward. Ling's trying to get a cheeky kill on that supply depot. Got it pretty low before Ziggy could respond with an SCV, but it's no big deal. Seeing the Roach Warren, Ziggy really is in a tough spot. I mean, he could have tried microing against them, bouncing up and down, throwing grenades, but especially since the Reaper was nerfed back when it was the thing to do, thanks Beyond, and it eventually got nerfed, like, you haven't really had to defend against this. No one's ever really done it. And this isn't even in the proxy way either, so it gets a little awkward when you do have a situation where they go for Ravagers and you're still stuck on Reapers. And honestly, defending against Ravagers with Reapers was difficult even back then because it was so micro-based. Speed is also done on those Lings, gonna try and help get a wraparound on the Reapers. The Reapers should be trying to avoid that with those grenades. SCVs being pulled are most effective against the Ravagers and Roaches, which they're currently attacking, but that's more so that they're surrounding and then having other units attack, you know, Hellions or a Cyclone or something like that. And that's not exactly what happened there. Lings took care of the Reapers, Roaches took care of the SCVs. Ziggy not too happy about that one. Bit of a hard counter, really. The chances of the Zerg player going for an early Roach Ravager Ling attack is not that high. The chances of you going for triple Rax Reaper pressure, not that high. For them to both meet each other, that's weird. Special is casting this? What? I thought maybe he was co-casting with Wardy, but he is just his own caster. Streaming. That's weird. And interesting. Alright, game 2 on Eternal Empire. Unlikely to have the same scenario. Like, basically impossible, I would say. Very quick game number 1. In the top right, on Eternal Empire, it is the Yellow Terran, Ziggy. In the bottom left is the blue Zerg, it is JonSnow. Man, that TeamLiquid's bugging out, man. I haven't usually had to worry about TeamLiquid's sideboard? Sideboard. I don't think I've ever seen it break or just not be dependable. This is freaking me out, man. If TeamLiquid's not dependable, then what is? What if life isn't actually dependable? Ah! 184-second latency to broadcaster. That's 64 seconds more than it should be. Yeah. Alright, so Ziggy going for the wall off again. If one person was going to do the same thing, I would have guessed Ziggy. Even though I haven't cast Ziggy in a while, in a pretty long time, I would say. Maybe like a WCS qualifier for Challenger. You know, that's how long. He was someone who really did like Reapers and this opener, and certainly more aggression. Maybe occasionally some like turtleneck play, but I do recall seeing a lot of these Reaper openers. It's certainly a fun way to start TVZ off as opposed to the standard same Hellion One-Rax expand, but dangerous thing to do, not just because that JonSnow might go for Ravagers again, which I said was pretty unlikely, and I'll still stay with it, but maybe JonSnow knows Ziggy. Oh, excuse me. But because this isn't really an effective opener that much anymore, and we're also talking about the server. You know, this is on NA East. It might not be a lot of ping that Ziggy is dealing with, but it still is. This is supposed to be favoring the guy who's able to respond the millisecond faster. In this case, that milliseconds thanks to the lack of latency. But all right, okay, I do what I want. JonSnow is not going for that fast Roach Warren this time, and is actually going for a third base, so he will have to depend on Queen and Ling defense, but that's totally fine. That is exactly what people usually do. It was just coincidental he was able to get to Roaches last game. If he wanted to, he could go for Roaches again in this game, but that goes into the line of, like, you know, if you over-defend, then they actually might be able to macro out of it, because you spent so much defending and are now on a composition you didn't want in the first place type deal. When you don't have to. You don't. Proper control of these units, and JonSnow could actually really deal with this quite well. That does include not losing Lings because of AI a lot of the time. Not losing Queens. Getting a Creep Tumor down to allow these gals more mobility. And not losing any drones either. All things that have happened in a perfect defense against this. It's difficult to have a perfect defense, though. It is. And JonSnow having to choose between more Queens and more Lings this early on in the game is also not injecting. Saving up for the transfuses, maybe a Creep Tumor. So we actually have a bit of a problem that even though he could afford more, with the third hatch he can actually spend his money. There was a bit of a problem with the larva. There we go. 14 Lings looking a lot more dependable. And if he wanted to, he can go to 3 queens at a time. It does feel like this is already done, though. Ziggy just runs away without sticking around too much longer. He does have a natural command center and is working on a 3rd CC, getting to that factory. But the question is, was that worth the opener? Did that do as much damage to JonSnow as it did to Ziggy? Actually doing that build, as opposed to a faster command center with Hellions. Yeah. Time will tell, I suppose. Right now, it looks pretty good for Ziggy. He's only down 2 workers and 75% down on his command center, but that should change as JonSnow realizes, like, oh, it's no longer serious. Let's get back to droning, which he's a little bit late to. There we go. 8 drones on the way. Your Reapers will always be a threat to the drone line, but giving away your Reapers for a couple of drones in case they get surrounded by Lings, they are kind of replacing your Hellions right now in terms of the ability to get to a 3rd CC safely. If you give away your Reapers, the Lings counter, and you are denied your 3rd CC for some time. But Ziggy will eventually be getting to Hellions, that's for sure. He's going mechanical. He's going mech. Double armory on the way. More factories soon to come as well. Or multiple starports, but I don't think he's the type of player to go for like immediately into battle cruisers. Some people like to do that. Yeah, more factories like now. Actually, what's he waiting for? Building a secondary wall off. That's what he's waiting for. He has the minerals. He has the gas. Okay, his armors did finish, so he spent 100 on that. Or 2, I guess. This makes me nervous. Like, is it the biggest deal? Perhaps not. But usually factory time, like production timings are very important. And he finally slaps another. There we go. 2 more factories. As well as an engineering bay. That question of muta or no muta probably weighing on his mind. And oh, look at that scan. Perfectly timed. It sees an evolution chamber and a 2nd evolution chamber building, but not much more information. Well, that and the lair's not done. So even if it was going to be a spire, it's going to be pretty darn late. Ziggy's got an opposable thumbs. Ziggy would be a Reaper player, but he definitely wouldn't be a mechanical player. Alright? Ziggy is too hyper. He'd be like Clem dropping everywhere and doing the billion things at once. Well, Ziggy makes up for a little bit of those later factories by building 6 factories total, which is actually not what you want. 5 facts plus starport, 2 starports later on as you saturate your 3rd. That's what you can afford. Going to 6 factories is a little bit awkward. And still no starport either. JonSnow, have you realized this? It'd be very easy to assume someone who had 3 barracks would go into bio. And if he doesn't know Ziggy, and I don't know why he really would know a lot about Ziggy. They're on different servers. JonSnow maybe at one point is playing on the European server quite a bit. Definitely hasn't been the case for a while, and not sure how close the Mars would be over there, and I can't think that they would be so familiar with each other that he would know to expect mech, but anyways, it's something that you should definitely check. He's not the only player, the first player to go from 3 barracks into mechanical. At this point, an 8-minute game, even with that weirder opener, so your timings are a little off here, you should figure that it's mech, just because there's been no drops and no push. But there really has been, like, no scouting. Not even on the composition, if I'm not mistaken. You just saw a handful of Marines push away his Overlord on the main base. JonSnow could still make Ling, Baneling, Muta work against a mechanical player, especially if Ziggy has no urgency to his push. If he just is planning on turtling, for instance. But if he is hitting a strong 2-2 timing, I'd be very worried for JonSnow. We'll see what his mutas can do. Reapers clearing up creep tumors more effective than those Hellions, at least until it change. They're not bad at that. JonSnow not wanting to invest in. Oh no, they're there. There they are. I was gonna say Banelings, but they're here. He's not gonna try and get a wrapper on those Reapers. They're being so annoying. Just get them. Oh well. JonSnow on a 4th base, going to a 5th. Very healthy on the economy. Finally stacking up those mutas, something that Ziggy is not aware of. You know, it's been so long since he scouted that finishing lair that if it was going to be mutas, why haven't they hit me already? Well, they were just, like, maybe a little bit late. They're on the way. But Ziggy has missile turrets and Thors on the way, regardless of his information. He is just catching everything in one big net, since nothing is immediately going to kill him. He can safely max out without having to, you know, direct his production towards one thing and the incorrect thing either. He could go into, like, a lot of Thors pretty comfortably from this tank count. He's got upgrades, got a 4th CC, and with all those missile turrets, he either sniffed out that it was mutas, maybe seeing how many lings there were and no roaches, or he was just playing a turtle style. But no, he's hitting that 2-2 timing. And you're maxing out as you march across the map, so this is pretty damn strong. And I didn't actually think, let's see, MVP did this, TY or Innovation did this. I've seen no starport mech pushes, but I didn't know you got another factory. Huh. Well, I did not think JonSnow would take that fight. I mean, it's one thing to catch the tanks on siege. It's another thing to do it with a bunch of mutas and Ling Baneling against mech units. Like, JonSnow needed to actually be totally maxed out and envelop that army with Ling Baneling, and he might have had a chance. But he wasn't totally maxed out. Supply was even going into swarm hosts, which are not ready to go, and JonSnow just seems entirely blindsided by this push. Very awkward indeed. Swarm hosts would be amazing against this, since the Hellions aren't here to protect their buddies. They have Blue Flame. They don't even have Blue Flame. No transformation servos, but I mean, are they too late? 4th base goes down. No chance at a 5th base. Well, this is the 5th base, and it did get saved by the Reapers. From the Reapers. Here comes the big Lings around on the Thors. Nothing to barbecue the Lings or the Locusts, which are now redirected towards the tanks on the high ground. Tanks doing as much damage to the Lings as to their own buddy Thors right there, and it will get cleaned up. Ziggy did get his 4th base up and running. He's going into Blue Flame. He's still using the... He's still building Hellions, even if they weren't there on the front lines, and actually using them to harass. But he did grab 2 bases. Severe disruption in JonSnow's economy. And those mutas didn't end up really doing anything, so a bit of a wasted investment. But the Swarm Hosts, it might have made up for it. They took a really good engagement with those Lings. That is a lot of drones going down. Not over here, but over here. Lots of drones going down. Unprotected 5th base. Spinecrawler on the way now, but 2 queens do not kill Hellions that quickly. And the, I think it was a bit oversaturated too, because he lost the bases to the right side. Now, eventually he'll replace all that, since he's using a very cost-effective unit called the Swarm Host. But for Ziggy, this now means that he will hopefully get maxed with the proper upgrades, Blue Flame and 3-3, and then be able to push into Swarm Hosts and take advantage of their weaknesses, which is if they don't have Locusts, what do? They use 1 defensive wave and then you don't have anything else, like then they were in trouble. And right now, JonSnow doesn't have much else. He has 5 mutas, 7 queens, a handful of Lings, like literally 4. No chances to build in Roaches for Ravagers, as I don't think he ever got the Roach Warren. Oh, he did get a Roach Warren, just never used it. He's getting a Nidus Worm, which goes hand in hand with Swarm Hosts, but the attack is already underway because Ziggy didn't take any damage. He lost his army, thanks to the Swarm Hosts, but defended against their offensive Locusts pretty easily. There's only been 1 or 2. This first engagement's a little bit awkward as the Banelings roll in. They're getting effective splash because the Thors are really, really clumped up, but I once again look towards the lack of Blue Flame Hellions. I feel like every time I look at the production tab, there haven't been 4 Hellions producing. Occasionally there have been, but not always. And then, of course, he just lost a handful to the left going for that harassment. Still no starport either. Adding on more factories. When he has this many bases, it absolutely makes sense. But I really would like a 3rd reactor so he can build 6 Hellions at a time, because that's going to make his army a lot better. And that's looking a bit more decent. The Banelings are there to crash into the Hellbats, and they might have done a little bit of that there. It was mostly just an awkward engagement. Ziggy continues to expand as part of his death march. And JonSnow is feeling the pressure on this right side. He might continue expanding to the left. Locusts, not really. They maybe could have gone for the tanks. They weren't so protected, but grabs a handful of Hellbats. That's nice for Ziggy. Drones went down too, and Ziggy's looking more confident. The lack of starports isn't necessarily a big deal. We're talking about lacking Liberators, which are helpful. They're good units, but isn't exactly super important. They're also good at harassing, but the Hellions been doing a good job so far at bats. I'm so surprised it isn't there. Few Hellbats helping out. Tanks also have to be careful not to just splash down their Thor buddies again. We saw a bit of a split from Ziggy. He's really continuing the push, continuing to rally forward. The Nidus Swarm popped up, but the Swarm Host, as JonSnow's really only army right now, have to stay back at home to try and help out. He's building a Ravager army as well, finally, but it's pretty darn small, and unfortunately that means he's not really as mobile as maybe he could be. You start seeing Ravagers buy time with Corrosive Biles defensively while the Swarm Hosts pop off a Locust Wave, barely get back in time to help any push. Those are the engagements that the games that really start to frustrate a Terran. Or Locusts don't have, Swarm Hosts don't have their Locusts, and Corrosive Biles hit the units, and sounds up being a powerful unit comp despite not having your Locusts involved. Like, that's when it gets really frustrating. JonSnow was a little one-dimensional for a second there. He just was basically all on Swarm Hosts. He's lost a couple of drones, making more room for those Ravagers, and he's continuing to expand them, upgrade them as well. Roach speed is done. I guess he could have done this earlier, but it took a little while. Cyclones on the way. Cyclones have been a tech swap against Swarm Host before, but I think Ziggy's just opening up options for him. Not going to be the best Locust Wave right there. Oh, well, that one Thor is being caught out. You suck, Thor. Couple of tanks going to the left side. I think he's figuring out that his opponent must be expanding to the top left. There's not many other options, but a mech player is so entrenched on your side of the map. I mean, you either break them and take the side of your map back, or you expand elsewhere, and he has not broken Ziggy, not yet. The Hellion count still not looking too hot. This Locust Wave actually might be really, really brutal, even spreading them a little bit so the Thor splash damage doesn't hit them as well as it could. Planetary is helping with the Locust as well in lieu of the Hellbat numbers, so it's not going ever as badly as it might look like it will. JonSnow also isn't really getting a surprise Locust Wave, where the Thors aren't spread out, they don't have room to maneuver. That's when a huge Locust Wave like that is really difficult to deal with, but JonSnow's been popping them off from 5 miles away, so plenty of time for Ziggy to respond and just kind of kite them as much as you can. Nidus Swarm was blocking the command center. JonSnow, he really needs some units to go over and start taking out bases, because apparently you can't take out these ones, so don't let your opponent get to every side of the map. That's true for any race. Corrosive Biles coming over to the left side. He will want his hatchery back there, and hell, he might even take this hatchery over here, but more importantly, better than that would be finally getting this planetary. And he says, you know what, screw your mass Thor shit, I'm gonna go around. And Ziggy did not seem to notice in time, not that I can think of what he could really do. If he had positioned his Thors in front of the planetary, I guess, but then they might have died. That was the type of engagement, coming over in a more awkward position, threatening something that couldn't move. That really scares the Terran's composition. Raider Spire is on the way, but I heavily advise JonSnow not to go into Broodlords against what Ziggy has been going for. I love seeing the Banshee speed for some harassment here. Ziggy's been doing well on harassment, but it could definitely be better with a couple of Banshees. And it's going to be very annoying for JonSnow, as well as for clearing up Swarm Hosts and Nidus. That's a good move if you can afford it, which Ziggy can. He successfully expanded to the top left, even as he lost his bottom right, and he still has a lot of his army left over. In fact, splitting his army 50-50. Left side, a little less Thor dependent, but still a lot of them. Going to be able to grab a base before JonSnow can respond. He does respond, but now this army gets to walk free, and this army might still get the hatchery and be able to skedaddle. The Locust Wave isn't available quite yet. 18 drones go down as well, as some of them just stop and stare. I think they got dragged into the army right there. The Swarm Host will soon have an attack, but this was already a ton of damage. And Ziggy continues to expand every time he catches JonSnow paying attention somewhere else. He expands where JonSnow isn't. Ravager's taking on fully upgraded Thors. Need help with the Locusts and Lings. Here they come now. And that looked a little bit better towards the end. Lings also would have done an okay job at some of these, like, run-bys, I guess. You had 2 tanks at the top left, and those Thors, it's not that they die to Lings very quickly, of course. It's that they just don't kill the Lings that quickly, either. With an orbital here, and that is the better option. It's weak against the Lings, which have finally made their way out into the field again, but strong against the Locusts because it just lifts. It will survive. Ziggy seems to have this game under control. JonSnow does have a bank. He still has an army because swarm hosts are that effective. But Ziggy has done a great job pinning JonSnow back, forcing him to use defensive swarm hosts, and then also killing all of his bases so he can't just, you know, tech swap into a billion Brood Lords. Because that's what it would take to actually beat a Thor army like this, is like 15 plus Brood Lords. That was weird. Ravager's gonna try and pop Corrosive Biles on the Thors. They actually do splatter them, but the Thors just like live through it. Locust on the right side, Corrosive Biles on the left. That's a pretty good setup there, and Corrosive Biles hitting the heart of the army as well. Locust are finally gonna take out the Thors. There we go. More of them coming through here. And all the Thors go down, but Ziggy's not done. He's actually just rallying the middle of the map with tanks again and just continuing to build Banshees as JonSnow finally goes into Corruptors. Again, I hope he doesn't make Brood Lords. If he goes into Corruptors to help take care of that, he could try adding on Vipers, but I think we're talking about a difficult army to control at that point. You clump them with the Corruptors, it can work out okay, but the speed of both of them are different. And it's they're very high risk for getting shot by the Thors. So the Corruptors can try to survive a little bit against the Thor single shot, but Vipers disappear pretty quickly. So it's risky, just because you'll lose them probably, but Vipers would be somewhat helpful. Parasitic Bomb on the Banshees can be very effective. Or a Blinding Cloud on these tanks, either one. But no Thors to cover the Banshees. Ooh, they get the Nidus Storm, hopefully nothing was in that. Means the Corruptors take care of the Banshees. Now, Banshees with speed do outrun Overlords, Overseers with speed. And that's really tricky about defending against them, but the Banshees actually have to run away and not be the only thing that's shooting. Ziggy loses his army to the right side and then loses the reinforcing army to the left. JonSnow continuing to hold on with amazing trades. I mean, how many swarm hosts have really gone down in this game? They got surprised by the Banshees once, so a few of them did go down. But still, JonSnow has been struggling to get up bases for most of this game. He's back down to his original 3, which means not much mining at all. Yet he still has an 160 supply, which is not bad. He's actually doubling the army supply of his opponent when Locusts are available anyways. And those Corruptors, if they're not protecting their army, could probably be peeing on a couple of buildings. Ling's also not a bad idea, as Ziggy has started to get more concerned about the Locusts. You know, building orbitals more than planetaries, or just not building anything at all. Ziggy might have been expanding pretty well, but he actually wasn't building too big of an economy. Stuck around 60 workers, not building more orbitals to stack at home for more mules. And if there were like 12 mules going away at this base constantly, he definitely have a bigger bank. And that might actually be why he loses this game. He should have had a lot of momentum behind any, you know, Hail Mary defense that JonSnow had, which certainly he had a good defense in this entire game. Ziggy should have had more momentum to still win, and unfortunately he doesn't. He got drastically low in supply after losing the Thors to the combination surrounds there. Then he rallied in, which is usually a no for mech, but occasionally can be the right call. Wasn't the right call there, loses that, and really struggled to replace it. I mean, that was not in the blink of an eye, which is understandable if you can't replace it that fast. That was over 1 or 2 minutes, something like that. And he still was on a very low supply. His economy just actually wasn't as good as the command centers on the map made it look. And that's too bad. This must be a frustrating loss, if it actually is a loss. Now, Ziggy manages to stabilize the cost of another base, 2 bases actually, as this one goes down. But he does go back up to an army supply that's at least somewhat... The armor supply itself is convincing, but the actual armor composition is getting less convincing. Like, more and more we should see the cracks of not having blue flame Hellions protecting your Thors. As they are now on the defensive, the Locusts will be pushing them into a corner or up against a wall. And that's going to mean that they die. Whereas before, they were able to just kind of run away, get an opportunity, or firing away as much as they can before running away. Like, they were looking like they were effective without Blue Flame Hellbats, but they really aren't supposed to be. Now, Ziggy does take out the majority of JonSnow's workers. Actually, JonSnow was at 14 workers. He lost 4 more, he's down to 10. That's pretty damn bad. So Ziggy probably still going to end up winning this game, provided he takes his sweet time, right? Like, if he takes an engagement, guesses wrong, and loses his army, well, then JonSnow gets perhaps a killing blow. But if Ziggy just actually says, you know what, take that base, I have 2 others, take that one, I have 2 others, take that one, I have 2 others, while he slowly maxes with the resources he can collect, and I think Ziggy wins. But Ziggy has a new problem. He built so many command centers so quickly. Apparently it's part of his supply. In a really big fashion, because maybe supply depots also went down somewhere to the Locusts. Bit of an awkward start as the Swarm hosts run into the army, but in this case, not such a bad engagement. The Thors were able to hit the Locust directly as opposed to their buddies. The Concave was good for the mech, and that was really not so bad. Ziggy feeling like he's in charge once again, but here come the Corrosive Biles. One of those things that I was missing, I was harping on for the first, like, 15 minutes of the game, and then we finally had it included. There's definitely a reason why it's a combination of these units that makes it really strong. And both providing, you know, one literally providing free units, the Locusts, and then another one having a spell to be more of a spellcaster. So just all in all, very effective units with resources lost. Now, it's actually not too bad. JonSnow's resources lost, looking much worse, I think, since he lost so many bases and was under pressure so many times. But still better than the mech player. And then look at the actual units lost. He has eventually lost 22 Swarm hosts. A pretty fine number there. And 35 Ravagers, definitely expensive. Ziggy has kind of cornered JonSnow. Corrosive Biles come down on the Thors, but here come the Locusts. Ah, yeah, there you go. Locust on the Thors. 3, 4, 5. Not quite as they run away. 4.5. And that is how effective the Swarm host can be. But JonSnow was not without his own losses. Every time he's run forward to support them with the Corrosive Biles, or just accidentally had a Swarm host moving too much forward, he's been losing units. Damage supplies have evened up. JonSnow has a very small economy, but he has one. Not very much longer. But this game is not determined yet by the overall supply, that's for sure. Planetary to the top left can be broken by Corrosive Biles and Locusts. But that will involve the very big dedication from JonSnow on that base in terms of time. And time is not exactly on his side. Gonna lose a base and save, again, 10 drones. Lost a couple of roaches on the rally, which is seriously a big deal. You can't really afford to make roaches, much less Ravagers, but it could have helped in the main engagement. 2 Thors are very, very weak. No repairs going into them. Corrosive Biles coming down from above, not really hitting very much. A single Banshee, no, double Banshee, doing way too much damage, and the Cyclones appear, and the Cyclone's actually a very good call. GG. JonSnow finally forced to tap out. Ooh. I mean, I thought Ziggy was in a winning position for quite some time, the way he was bullying JonSnow with that composition, but then he was suddenly down 120 supply. Scary stuff. Game number 2 goes to Ziggy. Discord has an inbox? What the hell? JonSnow immediately jumped into the replay, or probably pressed rewind to see how bad the situation was. What happened to JonSnow? It's not that he had to complete school. Well, I mean, that's always been part of it. He's always been a part-time student. Or full-time student, part-time pro. But it's that he graduated. I was on to his big boy job. Which I don't know if he has the big boy job or not. I'm not sure his situation right now. But, yeah, pseudo-retiring. Did people join this because of what's coming up next, maybe? Oh, probably. Whoever wins this goes on to face Kellozer. That's why everyone's here. Game number 3 on Everdream. Top right, it is the Yellow Terran Ziggy. Bottom left, the Red Zerg, JonSnow. JonSnow. I don't know if he didn't know it was mech or not. Sometimes, to be fair, sometimes bio doesn't really have a swift follow-up. It usually does. You're either going to expect a drop from a bio player after a 2 racks or 3 racks, whatever it was, or like a 2 tank push. But sometimes they don't. That's usually the first sign, like 6 minutes rolls by, 6:37, you're just like, what's happening here? And I remember talking about whether or not he knows it's mech around 7 minutes. So, yeah, I feel like JonSnow would have figured out that it was mech, but maybe not, maybe not. Just the way that he was... Just the way that he wasn't maxed out, basically, is what I'm thinking. Because again, Mutaling Baneling can be something to use against your opponent. It's not as dependable. It's a little scary, but it can be used. And if he had been maxed out, there's 23 more supply. I wonder if he could have taken, like, a good enough engagement. Plus, like, all of his army wasn't there. What if it wasn't mutas that really did look quite poor against Thors? Because usually with a mech push, like, if they don't know you're going mutas, it's 2 Thors. But Ziggy actually went immediately into Thors. Like, and I feel like JonSnow would have struggled a bit less on the first push. But the first push was also stronger. The early game was a little bit wonky. Who came out really ahead? Kind of seemed like Ziggy did, even though JonSnow had the opportunity to macro hard after it. Felt like his economy was never as... It wasn't as as good as fast as it could have been. And also it was a 6 factory push as opposed to like a 5 fact 1 starport. Which, if he does that again, we'll see if that's very much so on purpose. As I said, I know that there is a starport less push. It's existed actually in Starcraft for quite some time, but even back to Brood War. But I didn't know you went up to 6. I didn't know that. You don't see it much anymore, partly because you don't see mech much anymore from the professionals. And even when we did see it, there was that whole phase when it was just battle mech all the damn time. Or extreme turtle mech, extreme turtle. So cool to see something different, but I also feel like JonSnow just wasn't in a prime position like he could have been. Play before Swarmos route as well. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ziggy's gonna go for 3 racks again, which JonSnow is not gonna have a roach response to. He got kind of lucky in that first game. They really should not be killing the 3rd hatchery. That's disturbing. That's not good for JonSnow. The speed's not done here. It's got 15 more seconds, 10 more seconds, but just enough time for the Reapers to actually kill the 3rd base, it looks like. Oh, he's got to cancel it. Ouch! And he's maybe gonna get us around on these Reapers. That's a big maybe. Good control here from Ziggy so far. Queen's unable to help because they're slow. They're so slow off of creep, and this is turned from something really good into something really, really good. Something really, really good for Ziggy. Gets the third base cancel when it's like 70% done. Gets a queen, gets a handful of lings, forces out more lings. This is exactly the situation the Reapers would have wanted to find. I guess a better position would have been literally going into the main base and winning the game, but that's usually too difficult of a request, so this is probably as good as you can get with the Reapers. JonSnow having his worst response yet to the Reapers. It's gotten worse over the 3 games, unfortunately. And it looks like this actually might be the snowball effect that Reapers have. Ziggy, smelling blood on the water, continues to rally in the Reapers. I think he went up to a pretty high count last time anyways, but if he really sees an opportunity, he could just continue building them and not swapping off to Hellions. He will have gas for a factory eventually. There we go. It comes down now, but while still producing 3 Reapers at a time. Immediately going into the extra gases as well, as he is planning on that mechanical swap. The link count is actually not that scary, I want to say. If Ziggy's micro is decent, he'll be able to take care of this. Yeah. He doesn't want to face first on a creep against the queens, of course, but yeah, he's kind of in the right. Well, I guess now he does. He's kind of in the right to be careful. He actually will win this. Roachborn is on the way as JonSnow realizes how bad this has gotten. But it really is the case that you either want to defend this with Queen Ling, or you want to have already chosen defend with Ravagers and have like 3 or 4 Ravagers by now. Also threatening a counterattack, which these units just simply won't do. JonSnow is truly feeling desperate. I think he might do a Nidus Swarm. Lair gets started up here. He does have the Queen count for it. He will have the Roaches for it. And Ziggy might go into Hellions immediately. Like, okay, he's just gonna tap out, actually. GG! The potency of 3 racks.